Hi there, it's me, Annalisa Boyd, Orthodox Christian wife, mom to 10, bread baker, candy maker, self-proclaimed doula, accidental midwife, and the author of The Ascetic Lives of Mothers. Hear me, Special Agents of Christ, and creator of saintsbox.com. So today I'm going to do, I guess it's like part 2, or I don't know, another little segment on things having to do with racial, just all the racial stuff that's going on right now. I've been trying, with the time I have, to listen to a lot of different perspectives, and including Orthodox perspectives. I'm very happy that there are Orthodox conversations taking place. There's a chicken. I'm very happy that there are Orthodox conversations taking place, and I think in the Orthodox community, that's a really good place to start. But I am noticing still, I have a slightly different perspective about some of the things, or the conclusions, I guess. I'm coming to different conclusions based on some of the experiences I've had, or feeling like ideas aren't being followed all the way to their maybe rightful or more accurate conclusions. Again, I'm not a philosopher. I'm very simple when it comes to life and understanding life and the world around me. So I may be totally off, but it's my perspective. So there we go. So I was listening to a podcast that was done. I'll have to get the names. But anyway, it was a Mother Abbess and 2 clergymen who were talking about reconciliation and race and all of that. And I have her book. I should probably know this, but I don't. So we'll put this in the hello. Put it in the comments. I will give names and link the book in the comments. But they were talking about, and I really appreciated, I mean, she's a very learned woman, and had some really great insight, and definitely things I wasn't aware of as far as history and Black people in America, not pre-slave trade, that I thought was very interesting and informative. One of the things that seems to keep coming up is this, the idea of systemic racism and applying it to people rather than the system. And that's where I have trouble. Is it's the same problem I have with microevolution and macroevolution. So with microevolution, there are changes, evolutionary changes that take place within species. But for example, the finches on the Galapagos Islands that Darwin studied, the conclusion that he came to was that there was evolution that took place, and it did, because there were finches that had larger beaks and finches that had smaller beaks, and there happened to be more rain one year, the year that he was there, and so the birds with the smaller beaks died off because the berries or the nuts that they ate were bigger because there had been more rain. And so the birds with the bigger beaks survived. So you have the survival of the fittest. But somehow that was taken to mean that this macroevolutionary process had taken place. And it didn't. Or that, things like that are used to explain macroevolution, these big changes and big jumps and becoming a different species. Those birds, not only did they not become a different species, they were still finches, and they were still the same finches. They were still the same species of finch. They didn't become another type of bird. They were still that kind of finch. Just there had been some small changes that had taken place. And so I feel the same way with race discussions. That would suggest that because there are systems either that have been in place or are currently in place that have negatively impacted minority communities, and in this conversation we're specifically discussing the Black community. So systems that have been put in place long time ago, like redlining, that was one of the things that was brought up, where Black people, they really couldn't get loans. They really weren't allowed to purchase homes in certain areas because it would lower the property value and things like that. And while that is currently illegal, because it was a real thing, before it was made illegal, it has had negative ramifications that maybe we are still seeing today. So those are true things. There have been systems that have been put in place or were previously put in place, and even though they may have been changed, there may still either be some byproducts left, or that's not the right word, but there may still be ways that those policies are still either kind of under the radar being enacted, or they're still negatively affecting, kind of the aftermath is still potentially negatively affecting the minority communities, specifically, again, the Black community, because that's our discussion right now. And that is true. There are things, and that's something we need to look at as true, that there are things that have affected the Black community and may still be affecting the Black community, that were laws or systems that were set in place a long time ago. But it does not follow, in my opinion, to decide or to place blame or responsibility, even unknown responsibility, on white people. To me, it does not, it's not the same thing. Because white people are so far removed from those systems. Most white people were not the people, or did not have the ancestry specifically tied to the specific systems or laws that had been enacted, and therefore should not be held responsible. That weight should not be put on their shoulders for something that they did not have any responsibility for. So in my previous video, I shared an example that one of our priests had shared about why the slogan Black Lives Matter is one that we can proclaim as well with the houses. So you have a community, and there's a house that's on fire, and everybody runs out and they start spraying down a house that's not on fire with water, because all houses matter. Which is fine. I thought that was a very good example of why we are focusing on this topic, because it's needful to focus on the house that's burning. However, to me, it would be like somebody who never did, or no longer lives in that community, who moved away, who came back and set a house on fire. And the owners of the house expecting everybody else in the community to apologize for the person who came in and set the fire. That would not be appropriate. It would be appropriate to expect the people in your community, your neighbors, to help you put out the fire. And it would be appropriate for you to expect the people in your community to help you rebuild. And it would be appropriate for there to be an expectation of the community to, not just restore the house to livable condition, but to make it stronger if possible, make it fireproof if possible, to make it a better dwelling than the one that was there before. Those are all appropriate responses and expectations, but it is not appropriate to expect the community to apologize for something that they didn't do. And I think you would alienate said community if that was the expectation. They wouldn't be able to support the person whose house was set on fire, and wouldn't be willing to support that person and help to rebuild and try to make ways for arsony to not happen again if they are being told they need to apologize, like personally apologize for the arson that took place. Then there was a video that I watched that was not orthodox, but it's a series called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. I feel like those are done very well, very well. And but again, I feel like there are assumptions and conclusions that are made, and conclusions that are not kind of followed to their full end in those videos too. The first one I watched had to do with he had a white family on there and getting their perspective of what was going on and his perspective. And he was, the host was thinking about how, not too long ago he had dinner at his white friend's house in Texas, and he thought while he was having dinner there that just 70 years before it would have been illegal for him to be doing that having dinner at this white friend's house could have ended in his execution. And true statement. However, if you follow it a little further, he would have understood or been able to vocalize that would have been true, and the friend could have met with the same fate for having been open-minded and welcoming of an African American person, that their lives could have been in danger, the lives of their families, their home could have been burned down, they could have been run out of town, lost their livelihood, all of this, that it's this all-encompassing thing that has affected our ability, these systems have affected our ability to live in peace with one another. They have not promoted the unity that friendship was encouraging, and allowing that to spread to other people to help with their understandings and the changing of laws and the changing of systems and the attacking of faulty systems. So that's why I think it's very important to follow things to their end, because we do not want white people doing things just because they feel guilty or just because it's politically correct to do so, because it's not going to stick. When I think of my children, everything goes back to my children and parenting. If my children have not bought into something, they may do it because they could get in trouble for not doing it, but I would much rather them do something, participate in the household, do good deeds and almsgiving, because it is the right thing to do, because they've bought into the importance of almsgiving. I'll use that as an example of almsgiving and taking care of the widows and the orphans, than something that they need to check off on a list or something that they'll get in trouble for if they don't do it. And socially, you'll get in trouble if you are not being supportive. I think of countries where there's a dictator who dies, and the people are in the streets and they're weeping and they're tearing their clothes. It's not because they are mourning the loss of that dictator. It is because they know that they're being watched, and their lives could end if they don't respond appropriately. And we're in that type of situation. We want any change and reconciliation, and we want the actions of our white brothers and sisters to happen because their viewpoint is that we are their brothers and sisters. I was talking last night to my children about some of the interactions with my brother when I was growing up, and we had kind of a love-hate relationship. We didn't have a good relationship until we were both adults, and now we have like an amazing relationship. But before then, I was the little sister, and he beat on me sometimes, or he made me stick out my tongue and taste cayenne pepper powder, and it got in my eyes, and just all sorts of things. Didn't want me in his stuff, and squabbles and everything. But when somebody was against me, my brother stood up, and I didn't even always know it, and would threaten the person that was giving me a hard time, because it's kind of, well, I can do stuff because she's my sister. You can't do things to my sister. And that's what we want the response to be. It helps us also to be unified instead of othering. That we're not saying, they need to do this for us and them. We can't do that in the body of Christ. We can't do that in the body of Christ. If we are all adopted, now, I have children who are adopted. I have brown children who are adopted. I have white children who are adopted. I don't have any Asian. That's like the one thing that we kind of don't have in our family, but we kind of have everything else. But they are brothers and sisters. They are brothers and sisters. They can appreciate the uniqueness of each other. They can sorrow with one another. They can come together and support one another when injustices have been done. And that's what our job is in the body of Christ, is to come together. We are a body. So it is not another type of person who we're talking to. We are talking to ourselves. We are talking to our arm or our leg or our head, whatever. We are different parts of the same body. So the conversation has to be within the body. And then the body can come against the common enemy. So that's what I feel like is being missed in some of these conversations. Yeah. And I feel like there are enemies of many colors that are outside the body, that do not support the body, that are about killing the body. And that body includes every race in the Orthodox Church. We're all united. So we need to fight against anything, any organization that seeks to destroy what Christ has built, to destroy those who Christ calls his own. So anyway, so that's my perspective on this right now. I still have a lot more to listen to. I have a ton to learn. There's so much I don't know, but I thought it was important because I'm mostly hearing one narrative, and I think it's important to keep the discussion going so that everyone can be heard, so that we can try to understand everyone. And one thing I really appreciate about certain certain people that I listen to, like the podcast with Orthodox clergy, or Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. They are so peaceful, and I think more people will be able to hear what they're trying to communicate because of that, and that helps to broaden our understanding. So I think it's important for us to listen to lots of different perspectives, kind of block out the people who are militant on both sides, and ask God's mercy on this whole situation. So let's keep working out our salvation one moment at a time, and please pray for me, a sinner.